Clap your hands if you can. All right. Okay, guys, I guess I'm going to have to start again. The objective of today, we're going to talk about habit creation, okay? And the idea is to give you a little bit of the cues for you to understand, okay, this is how I build something that I can do consistently over time that's going to be meaningful for my life, all right? A big part of what we forget, especially when we are talking about, a long-term process of change and reinvention, is that a lot of the things that you have to do them consistently, right? You have to do them every day. And in order to understand what are some of the things that are impacting us, right, every day, it's good to have a roadmap, but also to understand that some of these things that you do repeatedly, they will have an impact over time, right? And in many cases, it's going to be an exponential impact, all right? So what I want to ensure is that you have that roadmap, but also the perspective of um, how long is it going to take, right? And what are some of the things that you can do? So, in order for us to do that, what I would like to start is, can someone here in the room who's been to the last couple of weeks workshop, has any of you taken a decision that will influence your lives 10 years from now? Anyone? Okay, I know at least one of you who has done something and said, okay, I'm going to do something that's going to have an impact in my life 10 years from now, and I'm going to do it consistently, right? If it, I will start then. I've done something over the last couple of weeks, right? I had decided not to take on large projects, right? Because my sense was I want to work with people, right? And most of my time I spend working with people. What I ended up realizing is that there are many large projects that have a transformative impact. And I decided to take on a very, very large infrastructure project, which is essentially reinventing a large part of a country. And for me to do that, I actually had to study again things that I have not looked at for 20 years. But if this project works, it could have a transformative impact in my life, right? I've decided to dedicate myself hours of my day to learn about that so that I can go and do this reinvention in this country, right? This was a deliberate decision, right? And it has consequences. One of them is that a lot of my free time, if you will, is being dedicated to actually creating that new knowledge that's going to enable me to run that project with the reinvention team. So I want to make sure that you understand that this, it's not something that happens overnight, okay? And a lot of the learning that you take when you're doing these things, they will have this positive effect, but the results are not guaranteed, right? You have to keep on working. You have to keep showing up. You have to bring your A game. And for that to happen, you have to be consistent. So, um, what I would like to share with you is a little story, okay, about the bamboo, right? I don't know if you're familiar with that. The bamboo, the first year, there are no visible signs of the bamboo, right? So you plant the bamboo, you water the bamboo, the soil has to be fertile, the sun has to be shining, all these things have to be happening. But the bamboo is not there, but it is there, right? What happens is that the bamboo, for the first year, the second year, you don't see it coming out of the soil, right? For the third year, the fourth year, there's nothing, right? Why is that? Well, because the bamboo, it starts growing down. It is building roots, and it's only going to get out and going to grow in the fifth year. It may grow, I don't know, 90 feet in a couple of weeks, right? Because the roots are there. So when we are talking about habit building, we have to remember that everything we do, all the effort that we're doing, these things are the roots of the bamboo, right? They may not be visible to the outside world. They may not be something that you're seeing an impact, but it's there. It's happening. It's changing you, right? And when the roots are solid, the bamboo comes out and runs very fast. In order to show you this, right? I want you to picture two things, okay? So I want you to picture the first scenario is you add one thing every day for 30 days, okay? So what is it that you're doing? You're just saying, so I have this one thing that I'm doing, and I'm going to sum with that one equivalent of that. So let's imagine that this is grains of rice, okay? So grains of rice, if you add for 30 days, 1 grain, 2 grains, 3 grains, 4 grains, in 30 days, you're going to have 30 grains, okay? But if you, over 30 days, you see and you multiply. So 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, and you start doubling it as you go. In 30 days, you're going to have 1.2 billion grains of rice, okay? So those grains of rice, that exponential curve, that growth that you're seeing, right now, it looks like you can only see that as of day 26, right? And why is that? Because when you're looking at the scale and you start comparing with people who have years of experience, who have been doing whatever it is that you want to do for 30, 40 years, right? And you see where they are, it's almost impossible to recognize the impact of that one thing that you're doing in your success because you're comparing yourself to them, right? When the reality is that, hang on a second, what I want to do, I need to continue doing. I need to be consistent because I need to build that up, okay? Now, it's a dreadful scenario when you're picking something like this up, you're running with it, right? And you're looking at, the future and you're thinking it's impossible. Well, it's not impossible. That I know for a fact, right? So what I want to give you is an easy mental model for you to understand, okay, when is it that the curves will detach? So in order for you to do that, what you do is you change the scale a little bit. So what I did here is I picked up the scale with 15 days, right? And I did the same exercise, is the same grains of rice, and you're adding them up. But instead of having 1.2 billion in 15 days, you will have 40,000. So if you look at 15 days at scale here, okay, it's the same, right? There's no difference. But if you look here, it is different, okay? But hang on a second. Well, from where I'm looking, even those 40,000, they look very, very far in the future. They're very difficult. How am I going to get to that point? Well, you need to be consistent because the exponential improvement will only happen with consistency, right? You're not adding 1 plus 1. What you're doing is you're multiplying knowledge by what you're adding, the habits that you're creating and the impact that you're having. So what do? I'm going to show you the point where things will start to make sense. So if instead of 15 days, you divide it again and you say 7 days, okay? So in here, in 7 days, you're gonna be at 150 grains of rice, okay? It doesn't sound like a lot when you compare to the rest, but it's 20 times more than if you're only adding 1 grain of rice every day. Why am I saying this? Because what you need to do is to gear yourself to accept the fact that some of this is work that you're going to have to be putting every single day, the habits that you're going to have to be creating, right? And eventually, if you're consistent, you're going to get to 1.2 billion grains of rice. But if not, well, you're still going to be there, right? And you're going to be repeating the day before. So there is a say that I like a lot, right? Some people, they have 25 years of experience, and some other people, they have 1 year of experience 25 times. The difference between the two is how much consistency they have on the habits they're creating and on the learnings that they're having in those habits. All right? So up to this point, do you have any questions? Anyone? All right, so let's continue. So how do you build habits? Okay, and I see here we have Mauricio in the audience, and Mauricio has probably heard me say this many years ago. I remember this was one of my pet projects. When I returned from Mexico the first time back to Brazil, the whole thing about habit creation is to ensure that you understand how do you break those habits down and what happens during that cycle, okay? Why is that important? Because if you do not understand how those habits are created, it's going to be almost impossible for you to manage the energy required for you to actually live those habits with the consistency that you need. I'll say it again. If you do not understand how those habits are created, it's going to be impossible for you to live those habits with the consistency that you need, okay? So in order for us to go ahead and start talking a little bit about that, I think it is super important, right, that we take this and we bring a little bit of concepting into what needs to be done, right? And what needs to be done here is very simple. So how do you know whether you have a certain habit that you need to create, right? So you design a life plan, right? You create something that you want to do, and then you're going to establish some habits, okay? So the billion-dollar question here is, how do you identify what's happening? So first, there is the cue, okay? So the cue is that one thing, one step that is going to trigger your brain to initiate a behavior, okay? What it is, it's like that one thing that's going to indicate, okay, if I do this, there is a reward, okay? Imagine the following. You're a caveman, all right? And you need to understand what are the cues for whether that gazelle is going to be running in front of you and you're going to be able to hunt it down. So it's something that is very like immediate, okay? And it predicts the reward, okay? Early on, when we were coming from the apes and evolving, it was very easy. It was food and water and maybe a little bit of sex. But today it's different. It's money, it's fame, it's power, it's status, it's praise, right? So it's this sense of personal fulfillment that all of us want to have. So the cue is that one trigger, okay? The craving is the second step. So these are the emotional forces, right? You need to have desire to do something. That's why we focus so much on the passion, right? When we talk about reinvention, it is about passion. It is about doing something that motivates you, that inspires you, that brings the best of your game on the table. If you don't have that, you're not going to be able to execute on the things that you want to do. So the cue is this irrational element, is this punch, is this flip of a switch. The craving is your desire, okay? Is that emotional connection with the thing that you want to do. The third step is the response, okay? The response is the thing that you're doing. So wake up in the morning, open my eyes, and I meditate. Okay, so when I meditate, I get a certain. I'm doing that response. So the desire that I have is to have a good day, a day with flow, a day with high energy, right? But for me to have that, I need to set the cue is when I open my eyes, I have to have like some cool music playing on my phone, right? It can't be the news or it can't be WhatsApp. So some people ask me, do you go into WhatsApp early morning? And 9 out of 10 days I don't, right? There are some times where I go in because I'm thinking about something and I want to release that. But the risk that I'm going to read a message that's going to, like before you get out of bed, that shuts me down, it's too big, right? So I don't want to go. I don't want to go there. So what's important about this is to ensure that the cue and the craving, they're aligned so that the response is there. But then what is the reward, right? The reward is the end goal of every habit. So the reward for me is that if I meditate consistently every day, I'm going to be centered, right? I'm going to be able to detach myself from some of the negative energy that happens with the problems that we all face. I'm going to be able to take a back step and look at things and identify, okay, these are some of the things that I can deal with, and these are some of the things that I'm going to have to get myself ready to deal with during the day. Now, the fun part of this is that when you perform that cycle many, many times, the learnings that happen because of that, they start multiplying, right? The world starts seeing you in a different way because that thing that you're doing starts having a resounding impact on who you become, okay? And that's why when we want to transform, right? When we want to reinvent, we focus on habits, okay? So what I want to give you here is an example, right? And what is that example? Is the example of how this happens in real life, okay? So I want to give you the 1, 2, 3, 4 step, okay? And the first one is your phone will buzz with a new text message. How many of you, if the phone rings, right, or if it vibrates, how many of you can actually stay there and ignore it, right? Please clap your hands if you can. That's what I thought. Oh, you can. Okay, Carlos, that's very good. I can't, right? If the thing is buzzing, I have to react to it, right? That's my nature. I want to learn. I'm a very curious person, so I want to learn what's happening, okay? So the response is, I'm going to grab my phone and I'm going to read that message, okay? Then you satisfy that craving to read the message, okay? So whenever the phone buzzes, you go and you get it and you read it and yeah. Now, what's the problem with that, right? This is actually a bad behavior because if the work that we need to do is a focused work and your phone is buzzing all the time, and it is buzzing all the time these days, then you're not being able to produce because you're getting distracted all the time. So I institutionalize, and everyone who deals with me, they know, my phone is always on do not disturb, always, 100% of the time. Why? because I am doing deep work 100% of the time, even when I need to read my mails and when we need to read my message, right? Because if I need to read my messages, I'm going to be focused on that, right? I don't want the phone buzzing all the time if I'm reading my messages, because that is a conscious, deliberate activity that I'm doing all the time. Okay? So, in order for me to change the habit, I had to change the cue. So, if my phone is not buzzing, I'm not going to feel compelled to pick it up every time it does. Do I still pick it up? Yeah, right? And I have a horrible habit on that. That for me to change is what I do is I institutionalize phone breaks. When I look at my phone, just to look at it, right? And that again is a habit. So you're creating these pieces and pieces of things that you're doing in order to ensure that you get the desired reward, right? Questions up to this point? So if you want to make something, a habit work, you have to answer these 4 questions. How can I make it obvious? Okay, so the cue is something that has to be obvious. If my phone rings, I have to pick it up. If it doesn't, I don't. How can I make it attractive? Meaning, how can you make the habit that you want to create something that is attractive to you? And the opposite is true. If it is something that you want to stop doing, that you make it so unattractive that you're not interested in it anymore. How I can make it easy, right? So how can you make it so that the habit becomes really, really something easy? So how can you create the cues and the responses that are easy? And how can you make it satisfying? So these are the questions that help you create positive habits. The question is, what are the questions that help you eliminate negative habits? And the answer to that is very easy. You just flip these questions around. So you just make the opposite of these questions answered, and then you're going to be all right. Okay? So the best time to start this is now. Okay? If you want to do something, if you want to create a new habit, if you want to create something new, you have to do it now. All right? It's not about waiting and seeing when is the best time that I'm going to help to be able, okay, to create something. So what I want to do, and that's the exercise for you to take home, right? Use these questions, and you're going to get this presentation with the email that you're going to receive, right? But use these questions. How do you make it obvious? How do you make it attractive? How can you make it easy? And how can you make it satisfying? How can you use these questions to help define the cue, the craving, the response, and the reward that you need to have the habits that you want to have in order to succeed? Not only tomorrow, right? Because a lot of these things, they will take time, but 10 years from now, okay? So this is the exercise that I'm proposing for you. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, okay? And now I would like to start landing this plane here. So in order for us to land this plane, what I would like to know is, okay, is there anything that you heard today that you think, this is actually pretty cool? Anything that like, and if you do, please clap your hands. Okay. Very good, very good, very good. Thank you. Thank you. So, so the other thing is, what I want you to do is, if you had any aha moment in this, right? If you had something where you look at this framework that I'm giving you today and you think, I think I could use that to help someone somehow create something there. If you have that, send that to me, okay? And I'm gonna help put that framework in action, right? So what we're gonna do, because today the group is small, and if you're watching this in the recordings, same thing, right? Send it to me, and you know my mail. We'll then get that and then help you put that in a framework where we can help you not only create that habit, but spread the word of that habit that is being created. All right? So without further ado, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to keep this short and sweet. I hope you liked it. Love to have all of you in here. Okay? And I hope to see you next week again. All right? Thank you so much. Bye.